If you thought that Brock Lesnar versus Omos at WrestleMania 39 had Vince McMahon's fingerprints all over it, reportedly you would be right because he has pushed through this big WrestleMania match. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of World Wrestling Entertainment, and a bit of a different breaking news story here. We usually do two videos a day, one being a WWE news video and usually the other being an AEW news video, and that second video, or I guess third video, will come out later today. But there's this big evolving and breaking news story regarding Brock Lesnar versus Omos, and I guess more importantly, Vince McMahon's creative return. And despite Triple H saying that he and Vince McMahon would have conversations about creative ideas, despite WWE sources and officials insisting that Vince McMahon was not back on the creative side of things for WWE, he's already started getting his ideas back onto television, and one of them, which people suspected, is Brock Lesnar versus Omos at the showcase of the Immortals, that being WrestleMania 39. What many fans feared appears to have become a reality. Brock Lesnar was reportedly originally scheduled to face Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania 39, a match which looks set to take place at the show after Lashley defeated his opponent via disqualification at Elimination Chamber following a low blow from Lesnar. Instead, however, Lesnar was hastily moved into a program with Omos, with the Beast accepting his challenge on this past week's edition of Monday Night Raw to set up a clash at the showcase of the Immortals. The nature of the match, the opponent, the two people put together, the hasty way that this one's just been thrown together, prompted speculation that Vince McMahon was more involved in WWE creative than initially believed, and that looks to be the case, as WrestleVotes has tweeted in the last hour or so, quote, "I'm told the highly anticipated, very compelling Brock Lesnar versus Omos WrestleMania matchup was the idea of one specific, powerful person who pushed it through." The tweet was accompanied by a gif of Vince McMahon putting on sunglasses, signaling the executive chairman is once again involved in creative to the extent that he can push through matches that he wants to air on television or at premium live events. It has been stated by WWE since Vince McMahon's return earlier this year that Triple H retains the final say on creative as chief content officer, but it would appear that again the majority shareholder and the man with the majority voting power in WWE can push through decisions for television, for creative that he wants to see. Now, McMahon, of course, was previously the head of creative for decades until he resigned as the WWE CEO and chairman in the summer of last year, that being 2022, amid a sexual misconduct and hush money scandal. He then forced his way back into WWE in January of 2023 to pursue a sale of the company, being elected as executive chairman and trying to amend and change company bylaws, ensuring that any sale would have to be signed off and approved by him, and also ensuring that any media rights negotiations was also have to go through him. Now, he's since backtracked a little bit when it came to amending those company bylaws, but still, he has the final say on everything, and he's fully backing the company. And it had been widely rumored and reported that he would eventually try to make a play to once again become the head of creative, and this endless speculation has been there. It's been rampant, really, ever since he returned to the company, but in the last couple of weeks, there has been more and more of a feeling that Vince McMahon is coming back with his fingerprints starting to be seen in certain aspects of WWE television and storyline. Now, this speculation comes from several different aspects. It comes from people within the media space like Brian Alvarez, and also talent. We'll touch on the talent side of things in just a second, that Vince McMahon was getting more involved in WWE booking, with the real red flag, if you will, being this Brock Lesnar versus Omos match. I mean, Brian Alvarez tweeted during Monday's edition of Raw, quote, "That Brock/MVP segment came off as a total Vince segment if I ever saw one." This was then responded to by a tweet on social media that said, quote, "Otis with Maxine in that match versus Gargano also looked like it had Vince printed all over it. We didn't see any of that stuff some months ago." And Alvarez said, quote, "That was another one, yes." Now, when it comes to Vince McMahon's desire to return to creative, before settling for a spot on the board of directors upon returning to WWE in January, former WWE chairman and CEO Vince McMahon reportedly wanted to regain creative booking power in WWE as well. According to Dave Meltzer, previously of Wrestling Observer Radio, McMahon had desire as of a week prior to his return to run WWE creatively again, but the decision was instead made for him to focus on the larger business-related role with regard to shopping media rights and potentially executing a sale of the company. Again, it was certainly very interesting that when he did return to WWE in January and he forced his way back in, he held that company to ransom, basically saying, look, if you don't let me back in, I'm going to block and stop any sale of the company, but more importantly, I'm also going to block and stop any negotiations of media rights deals. I'm not going to sign off on them, and that's my power, that's my right as the majority shareholder and the person with the majority voting power. I can stop everything. Basically, again, holding his own creation to ransom, he then forced his way back into the company. Because of that, he brought with him two cronies in George Barrios and Michelle Wilson to ensure he had the appropriate voting power on the board. Other people left the company, including his own daughter, Stephanie McMahon. Other people that were actively investigating Vince McMahon last year and headed up the internal and independent investigation into his conduct, they also left. Now he's back, he has the majority of power, and also interestingly, his asking price for WWE is much higher than most people are willing to pay for the business. It's around $9 billion, which multiple parties and companies have said that's way too much. We did a story earlier today, Endeavor basically saying, we don't have that much money, we've already got quite a lot of debt, we don't really want to add to that debt. Even what people consider to be a frontrunner like Comcast, they said to Nick Khan on CNBC, we don't think there's anything there. Now, Nick Khan at the time was bullish about it, but at the same time, many people have seen this entire sale process as a means to an end for Vince McMahon. It's either twofold. It's one, just to get him back in the day-to-day operations of WWE, which it already has, but two, he would be willing to sell a company to the likes of maybe the Saudi PIF, the Public Investment Fund, if they would ensure that when they purchase the company, they'd be willing to say, hey, we're going to give you this money, but you're still going to run it. You're still going to run everything, but we own it. Again, certainly very interesting that he wants to be ahead of creative. He wants to be in charge. Again, it was fascinating to see that when he returned, his initial plans for returning weren't just to be the executive chairman and I'm only coming in to be in charge of just overseeing the sale of the company and overseeing these media rights negotiations. No, initially, his plan was much bigger and broader, according to Meltzer. That was to be in charge of creative, but then he felt that the real full hostile takeover, maybe that would have been a bit too much too soon. Now, going back to Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, he said McMahon, of course, wants to regain creative control in WWE, and he may use his position as controlling stakeholder and WWE's board of directors members to secure that and other powerful roles in negotiations with potential buyers of the company. This was back in January that Meltzer said this, and it's only really taken a couple of months to really start to see this start to become more and more and more apparent really what he wants to do. Now, again, what's interesting about all of this kind of stuff is there have been rumblings for the past week or so, maybe the last couple of weeks. I mean, there were fears once McMahon came back in January that he was going to take over creative, he was going to be involved, and WWE were quick to ensure employees and ensure talent that that wasn't going to be the case. We heard about these employee meetings that they had in WWE headquarters saying business as usual, but the business was not as usual because shortly thereafter that meeting, Stephanie McMahon was gone. We then heard about these talent meetings from Triple H and Kevin Dunn talking to talent at SmackDown and Raw, saying that yes, Vince McMahon was back, but Triple H still had the final say when it came to all creative decisions, and that he may have conversations with McMahon, but he wasn't going to be dictated to by the WWE chairman, and he still had the final say. And at the time, I guess that kind of relaxed people's fears, but those that are maybe a bit more hardened to the pro wrestling business and have been around for a while, they said, well, in reality, that's all good. That's all fine and well, Triple H saying that, but is it just lip service at the end of the day? I mean, Kevin Dunn even said at the meeting, I've worked with Vince McMahon for 20, 30 plus years, and I haven't even spoken to him about all this kind of stuff since he returned to the company. But why would he say if he did to all of these talents? And words are one thing, but the real evidence is actions. Action speaks louder than words, and some of these actions have started to get people talking. And as I mentioned, it was Sean Ross Sapp about a week ago who tweeted out this week, a WWE talent reached out and told me they believed Vince McMahon was back in creative. Now, it was interesting when he said that, for the record, he didn't think it was happening beyond what was previously reported, but that was just him. And in addition to that, WWE sources had said to him that that wasn't the case. As I mentioned, Sean Ross Sapp said that a source alleged that Vince McMahon was back in creative. At the time, Sapp noted that he couldn't confirm the story. Now, it appears that the story was false. Sapp took to Twitter and noted that WWE officials said that any fears of McMahon's return were, quote, unfounded. Triple H, as I mentioned, has previously said that McMahon has some input, but Triple H currently has the final say. That was a week ago, but then, in the ensuing week, we've seen Brock Lesnar and Omos be confirmed. We've seen stranger segments that felt more in keeping and suited to the booking that we saw in the Vince McMahon regime as opposed to the Triple H regime. And some of the decisions, some of the angles have just felt a little bit odd, certainly, haven't they, as well? Now, after Sean Ross Sapp tweeted about that story and spoke about it on his program and on Fightful Select, it's their Patreon service, be sure to check that out. He said, quote, sources within WWE that would be in the position to know have told Fightful Select that these fears are unfounded. We couldn't get any confirmations on those talent fears, as noted in the original post. Triple H has been open that Vince has input, but it's been adamant to talent that he has the final say, he has the final call, and Vince McMahon isn't involved in creative. But again, there's certainly been this feeling of that feels out of place. Maybe it's a gut feeling, or maybe it's just a feeling of people that have watched a Vince McMahon product for 20, 30 plus years, 40 years, and have then said, that feels strange. Now, speaking on Wrestling Observer Live, Brian Alvarez commented on the notion that Vince McMahon was back in charge of creative and says fans will know if he's back if the show goes back to how it used to be. He said, quote, here's the thing. It's already been stated by Triple H that Vince McMahon is giving him ideas, recommendations, and suggestions. This is not new. As far as Vince McMahon is back running creative, doing what he was doing before, if that happens, it's not going to be something that you're going to have to learn from Sean Ross Sapp, Dave Meltzer, or me. You'll just have to watch the show. I had people ask me if Vince McMahon was back running creative because they announced Brock Lesnar versus Omos for WrestleMania, and that seems like it was when Vince was back in charge, but he's not. The show is not what it was before, and when it is, you'll know. And PW Torch Wade Keller reported that he was told Vince McMahon was not back in creative, saying, quote, I was told flat out today that Vince McMahon is not back involved in WWE creative. Ultimately, the two people that would know would be Vince McMahon and Triple H. Now, again, whilst Vince McMahon may not be back in charge of running creative meetings and everything creatively is not being run past Vince McMahon as it was in the past, he's not the public face of creative, but if this story is indeed accurate, it's a massive change, and it's the beginning of Vince McMahon getting back involved in the product that we're starting to see on television. It's Vince McMahon suggesting things or forcing ideas through, and suddenly Triple H, who has the final say on all of these kind of things, maybe his say isn't so final after all. So it's an interesting one. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner. Remember, you can join the WN365 roster by clicking that join button, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.